Good morning and welcome to the second day of Comic-Con Africa 2020. I am your host, Robbie Collins. I hope you guys had a good rest. I know I did because we have a jam-packed day for you guys today. I'm telling you, we got everyone. It's going to be totally awesome. So please sit back, relax, at least brush your teeth, and then we can carry on with the day. Okay, I know we had Heritage Day yesterday, but you dressed in your heritage clothes, but today you got to dress in your best comic book outfits because we are giving away prizes, yo. We are giving away prizes, so you need to put on your best outfits, take selfies at home, and then you got to post using the hashtag CCA online, and you stand a chance to win awesome prizes. The other thing we're also doing is, remember, we are live on all social platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, YouTube. Guys, we have a great day coming up for you guys today. So please, please enjoy. Just relax. Don't feel shy to tweet us. Let us know how you feel about the show. All those kind of things. Your feelings matter. Okay, your feelings matter. We're going to have a great time. The other thing you need to remember is that you need to please visit our comicconafrica.online website, and you can visit the Pop Culture Galaxy, where you can please support our exhibitors. And yeah, just have fun, yo. Sit back, relax. And today we're going to start off with the African Comic Book Report. Peace.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be in the world. My name is Somto Ajuluchuku, and you're welcome to the African Comic Report, happening live at the Comic-Con Africa Online 2020. I'm super excited to be hanging out with some amazing creators, creators which I love very much, creators which I admire their work so very much. With me today is Akosua Hansen Nana from Ghana. Also, I have Mutundi Elias from Nairobi, Kenya. I have Loyiso Mkezi from South Africa, Johannesburg. And I have Yamakasi Kiyindu Archange from the Congo, but currently based in Paris, France. Today we'll just be going in to discuss about our industries and the diversities of our culture, and how that diversity also has spilled into the way we tell our stories from the various regions that we're in, and also the states of affairs in our individual industries. And finally, what connects us as African publishers and the future of our industry as a collective. Without further ado, I would love each of you to introduce yourselves, starting from Nana, and then we could just flow it down.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. So my name is Nana Akosia Hansen. So the Nana actually comes first. But I mean, people just call me Akosia. And I'm a writer. I'm an artivist. And I'm a media personality in Ghana. I host a radio show every evening, pop culture, hip hop, that kind of stuff. And yes, I love art. I love writing. And I'm the creator of Moon Girls.
Oh, awesome. Mutundi?
Hi everyone, my name is Mutendi Wright. I'm a novelist, scriptwriter, and a comic producer. Currently with a focus on telling African mythology stories through comics.
Okay, awesome. Loyiso?
Hi everyone. My name is Loyiso Mkize. I am an illustrator and a painter. I'm also the creator of Kwezi, which is South Africa's superhero comic book series of the same name, as well as executive producer for the animation that will soon be out. I think that's it.
Awesome. Yamakasi?
Hi guys, my name is Yamakasi. I am happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm a writer. I'm a filmmaker, currently studying producing for film and television in Paris. I am the creator of Little Little Orisha, which is going to be published next year and for which we have been working on an animated series at Vortex Corp. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. So I'm super excited to have a wealth of, African creators here. Definitely Yamakasi representing the Central Africa region, Loiso representing the Southern African region, Mutundi, being a voice from the East African region, and Nana Akosua Hansen being a representation for the West African market. Just starting from Loyiso, I would like you to, give us an insight into Kwezi. Tell us a little bit more about Kwezi, your journey starting a comic book. What was it like trying to conceptualize a South African hero, or a South African character, fictional story? And
Right.
what was the market like at the point when you were starting in accepting what was a superhero character?
Right. So Kwezi started off, first launch of the book was in 2014 when we launched the first comic book. And it was really, on my side, just my way of putting out there an idea that we could have a South African superhero. It kind of boggled my mind that we didn't have one. Although I kind of learned that we had a superhero named Mighty Man back in the 70s who was like an apartheid protagonist, or what do you want to call it, activist or whatever, right? So it was a complete propaganda type of character back then.
Yeah.
And for me, it was purely as a comic book lover. I loved creating comic books from a very young age, and the opportunity just landed on my feet, really, on my lap, really. To be honest, the idea to create the comic book was always something I was curious about, but the timing was always wrong. And for some reason, 2014, beginning of that year, I just decided to start illustrating this thing. And we launched it in May of that year, and we've been the comic book itself has grown from strength to strength. We've published 12 episodes now, and we'll soon be publishing 15. 3 more episodes. So I think by the time this airs, we'll have launched the next few episodes of Kwezi, right up to 15 episodes. So that's a big milestone. The character basically is a 19-year-old city dweller based in Johannesburg. He discovers that he's got powers, and and as soon as he does, he decides to sort of use his powers to become an internet sensation, right? A celebrity, if you will, an influencer, right? So, and then that's where he starts off as an anti-superhero, and of course he meets his companions, Mohau, Koi, and Azania, who help shape him. It's a coming-of-age type of story. He's a 19-year-old young man, without a care in the world, right? So wanted to start off like that on a very human level, and then as the story progresses, he investigates himself, his background, where he comes from, and what these powers actually mean and what they're all about. So it's been a story that's progressed this far, and yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if I'm missing anything. There's a lot to sort of unpack.
No, Kwezi is actually a really exciting story. I remember the first time I came across it, I think that was the year 2014 or so. And, I was blown away by the quality of the art, and also how the story didn't just captivate people in South Africa, but it was also a very massive sensation out here in Nigeria as well. And there's been a craving for, such stories. Nana, can you give me a bit of insight into Moon Girls? How did you come about Moon Girls? What inspired Moon Girls for you? And, creating a comic book in the Ghanaian space, what challenges did you face trying to come up with a comic book, trying to create a comic book where there are not so many, and what was What was that like for you?
Thank you. So, Moon Girls is actually an idea that been floating around like in the universe of my mind for like years. I think about 7 to 8 years. But it wasn't in the form of a graphic novel. It wasn't in the form of comics, right? I came to writing through poetry and then short stories and then articles and all of that. So I actually did write it out as the beginning of a kind of a novel and never did finish it. And then somewhere in 2018 at around 3 a.m., when I was communing with the gods, um, I got an email from a potential donor saying, do you have any ideas on something you want to do? And I work with drama queens. I founded an organization called Drama Queens, a youth activist organization, and we use artistic activism in our activism. So the idea was, okay, what else? We've done theater, we've done all kinds of things. What other things can we do? And I thought, okay, hey, a graphic novel, right? So I just wrote the idea for the application, and then we got it. And then because we got it, I had to actually come up with something. And so that's how Moon Girls really was born. And when I actually started to write out the characters, that's when I realized these were the 4 people I had written in my novel about 7 years ago. And these were, powerful moon girls. I don't, super heroes, goddesses, who are the guardians of the oracle of Ma'at. Ma'at is the principle of harmony and balance in the universe. And it's a principle I philosophically and spiritually myself try to live up to. And so in a sense, it was bringing out that spirituality into how in our everyday lives, how we are trying to navigate our capitalistic patriarchal system, and also your own inner moral balance. How do you find love, not give hate? How do you not reflect all the bad things you don't want in society? So Moon Girls is a very, very philosophical text, a very philosophical novel, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, about creating in the Ghanaian space.
Mhm.
Yeah, so as you're saying, I didn't know much about it till I entered, and I realized, there haven't been as many, and so it was actually difficult to find illustrators with the consistency that was needed of producing a chapter a month. That was the schedule I wanted. That's how I wanted it to roll. We release a chapter a month, meaning we are going to be producing and writing, illustrating everything within a month per chapter. And it was very difficult finding someone who can keep up that consistency. And then luckily, Animax FYB Studios, who've been doing, this work for quite some time with animation, came on board, and they kind of like took it,
Yeah.
and
That's Francis and his team. Yeah.
Francis and his team, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so really that's how that worked out in the space.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely, Moon Girls is definitely a project that took in the industry by surprise, and it was a pleasant surprise, if that I must say. Um, yes, we've had characters that were female characters, but we've never had a book that was 4 female characters, and that was
And
exciting to
queer,
see, and that was also very motivational for the female readers. It opened up a whole new audience, Um, even as Vortex 247, having the pleasure to publish Moon Girls, we've seen how that has created a whole new channel of audience for us in terms of the kind of people that now come to the website and the demographic that we're experiencing. Mutundi, um, your book Shadow Walkers won the Ron Mars Prize when he came to Nairobi for the Nikon 2019, right?
Yes.
And I remember that was a great time because I was there, and I walked into a
That's what we
comic book
meant.
shop and I was just picking out all these cool Shadow Walkers poster. If I to not disrupt it, I have like 5 dope Shadow Walk posters in my collection up there, and Shadow Walkers is tell us a little bit about Shadow Walkers. I'm going to let you do the talking. Tell us a little bit about Shadow Walkers and how it happens to go across the African space in terms of diversity of characters. And
Okay.
give me a little bit of insight on what it takes to actually run a comic book shop in Nairobi.
Okay, so with Shadow Walkers, Shadow Walker is the comic. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, it's actually a spin-off from the book. So I began writing Shadow Walkers in 2014. If you recall, I think there was a recession about that time. So in between jobs, I moved from taking writing as a hobby to taking writing professionally, right? And then with that, as a creator, I wanted to look at, as other people in this panel have pointed out, just starting out, I wanted to look at what's not in the art sphere in a sense. And I realized we didn't really have a fantasy story that covered all the gods of Africa as a collective, if you contrast that to European gods or Norse gods, right? And with that, you could provide a joint platform for all these different stories that have not necessarily been in the limelight or have been represented the wrong way. And what I found with Shadow Walkers is people do love to read, but visual is obviously an easier medium for consumption. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that led me to now transform it into a comic. And from that, just test the response to what people want to read. People do want African stories, but you also have to consider how they want to consume them. So that's why, for example, like Mkize is talking about putting Kwezi into the animation. The same thing with Akusa. She's also working on animations for her projects as well. Yeah. So just try to present it as many mediums as possible.
Yeah. What's the and then the comic book shop, putting out having a comic book shop in the space of Nairobi, how's that like, and what would you say is the status of the industry in Nairobi?
Okay. So it has been a very interesting challenge because one thing is you can create something, it could be a very amazing product, but the hardest challenge is actually which I'm sure you've experienced, getting to your audience. So making something for the audience and then delivering to the audience, there's a big divide there. So with managing the comic shop, that was my main focus. Like, where do I find the particular tribe that loves comics in Africa, but also wants to read African stories? Because we're in a catch-22 kind of situation where a lot of people love comics, but then you're also competing with established stories and established studios like Captain America, Avengers, all that stuff, Batman, Superman. So getting your voice within that sphere and converting people over to appreciate African stories more is one of the biggest challenges I was focusing on. And so far, so good. We've had a good response. As you've seen when you come to conventions, people do turn up. You just have to find the right way to engage them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yamakasi, what's your experience been like in making comic books for kids, and making comic books that are child friendly, and also what has been the challenge in being a comic book creator coming out from the Congo? Although I understand that you've been mostly based in South Africa, and from South Africa you've moved to France, but in your time spent in your formative years as a creator in Central Africa, what was your challenges and experience like in becoming a creator through that small market? And
Thanks for the question. So basically, I grew up in a country where art is not seen in a good light. So my father once told me, "I never want to hear you say you're an artist," and that broke me. Like I can still remember that day. So I grew up in that space where there's no comic publishers, there's no comic scene, there's no comic industry at all. I mean, now we have like comic book festival now. That's fine, but the way I grew up, there was nothing like that. I just used to read magazines, comic books from Europe. like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and all these things, and also Dragon Ball, so Japanese comic books, American comic books, but mostly Japanese comic books, and Disney kind of comic books. So that's how I grew up. There was nothing. There was nothing. I just kept writing. I started writing in primary school, though my mom said like it's even farther than that. But I just grew up writing and writing and writing. And at some point, I started drawing. But then I stopped drawing because it was wasting my time. I felt like it was wasting my time because I wanted to tell stories, but then at the same time, learning how to draw was taking my time. So I felt like, you know what, one day I'm gonna find someone who's gonna draw for me, and it's going to be as good as me being a writer. So I want to be the best writer possible, the best writer I can be, and I found someone who's gonna be the best artist that he can be. So I've just been working with people. So I had like people working with me, but they always dropped. Like they was abandoned. They always like gave up. I feel like I've worked with like 6 people, different people in Congo, but also in France, distance work and stuff. But like everybody just dropped. Like they saw no future in this. There was no future. There's no outcome. There's no money. There's nothing. So I've just been spending money buying art equipment for artists to work. I've been spending money on like on like countless things. I can't even count. If I have to count the amount of money I've spent on making art, like yeah, bro. At some point I got tired, but then there's something in me that just felt like I had to carry on. I had to continue with this dream, and that's how it took me to film school, like film studies, because I couldn't do comic books in Congo, so I had to find an alternative. So I found like, oh, you know what? I love movies. I can tell stories with moving pictures, and so let me just do movies, you know. But I will still write my comic books on the side. So that's what I did. I kept writing, but then I went to film school in South Africa. Spent 4 years there. Actually crossed roads with Loiso. One day, 2017, Cape Town International Animation Festival. I saw him in the corridor. We were walking crossroads. Can't remember him because I'm an unknown person. I'm not famous, but so yeah. That's what I did.
That's great, man.
What was that like? What was that like? Just passing the Loyiso KZ in the flesh. What was that like?
I was like, yeah, I passed him and I was like, hey, and it was so focused. I feel like it was focused on pitching something. I don't know. So yeah, I went there. I went there to pitch my story to the panel for the speed dating session with Triggerfish and all. So yeah, so we were both busy, but then I could remember him, so I could see. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy from Quincy, cool. But he couldn't see me, you know. Yeah, those moments when you meet your.
Didn't we even greet?
We didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I
think lockdown has taught us that next time we have to make sure.
For sure. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, that's how I've been growing. That's how I grew up. But I found the market in Nigeria and Ghana through Vortex, and because Nigeria has like this boiling industry, and there's so many people craving stories. So I found a market there. I found a welcoming home for me. I found a home in West Africa, and so entering the scene with children comic books, for me, I never actually expected the success or how people would respond to it. I just wanted to tell a story, you know. Just wanted to tell a story, and I felt strong about the story, and people reacted. The way they responded was like outstanding. I wasn't expecting it. So yeah, since then I just kept writing and working and trying to tell the story of my life, you know. So that's basically my answer to the question.
Yeah, man. Most definitely, we're excited that there are stories that can come out from that region, which don't just export the culture or the color of Central Africa, but also just exports the talents behind it as well. Because the discovery of you led us to discovery of your co-creator, who is Isato Kazi Dio, and even a whole new art style, which is the Kimpoki art style, which happens to be the art style of the Orisha Pikin / Little Orisha series, So You really carried the industry on your back and, you know, discovering that entire space and the artistry behind that space. You know, we just finished the first stage of the VX art tournament, and we even realized, you know, shout out to Loyiso, he's a judge, you know, and we even realized that, you know, even the young artists that were submitting entries from Congo actually knew who you were. You know, yeah, and they look up to you. So it's actually very interesting that the impact that you can make, you know, just by representing your region and, you know, doing it, you know, honestly and diligently. Um, um, Moving into Loyiso, right? You know, having the experience working with Super Striker, you know, did that kind of serve as a launching pad for the expectations that you had when you were working on the Crazy story? And also, what did you actually experience in terms of tenacity in producing what we have now to be a 15 episode running series? Now, there are other comic books that have run into 15 episodes, but none of them have been on the number of pages, colored pages, like the Crazy story. So arguably, I would say that Crazy is the longest running comic book on the continent.
Hopefully. No, I wouldn't say comic book. I think there's a lot of titles that can claim that. I think it's also important to also to remember how small this thing is and appreciate how big it can be. I think it's just we've been lucky because more than anything, what shone a light on Kwezi was that what made it stand out was not necessarily the volume, but the quality that I insisted on the property itself. Like, and to answer your first question, I think Super Strikers was instrumental in formulating the artist slash creator that I am. It's I mean, I have to maybe illustrate what the job entailed, right? Like, so your day job, your 9 to 5, every day was drawing. It was drawing a soccer comic book, you know. So every day you hold a pencil to paper and you draw sequence art day in, day out. So without one knowing, you really just master that craft, like through and through. So my years in Super Strikers started off as that, a penciler. But by the end, I mean, I was head illustrator as well as just like touching on different projects within the company. Company, of course, is Striker Entertainment. They're still going at the moment. I don't know about the comic book at the moment. I think that was been discontinued, but the animation is still up on Disney XD, etc. So I think on the standpoint of just understanding the parameters or just the range of the industry and what I can do with it, honing my skills, that's 7 years working as an illustrator in a pipeline production for this big comic book that was published throughout the continent, you know, like ridiculous print runs. We're talking 600,000 units a month. You know, this was it was a monster of a project and we had to produce it every month. So it was a good learning curve. I think I owe a lot to the company itself for existing in Africa, for crying out loud, you know. And this is a comic book that was free, you know. This produced for years. I mean, we're talking shy or just over 15 years of production. A comic book that's coming out via a newspaper like Sunday Times or via another medium, but made it into young South Africans' hands every month for those years and became part of the culture. So I'm coming from that type of pedigree. So when it came to Kwezi, it was more of a rinse and repeat, but also on a more that's more on a technical level. But on a sentimental level, it was something I wanted to do. It was more like something that I felt like I'm here to do this one because like and then that's I think that's a fair trade-off. You know, like it's good to have. I think I'm privileged in that sense. Other artists and illustrators don't have the benefit of a pipeline company that has art directors, creative directors, that has got pencilers, that's got inkers, that's got colorists, that's got DTP, that's got animators, that's got writers, a writing team, like literally like 5 people on a writing team. So, and that is your bread and butter every day. And so it was, in a way, it was like working for, like, you can imagine the Marvel in the back in the heyday, in the golden era, when they used to work like they were in a sweatshop. Not that it was, but it was pipeline production and very disciplined. It helped me a lot. I mean, like now it's shaped the quality that I want to showcase for our African continent. Not only are our stories great, because we've got a wealth of stories on the continent, but I think the quality is also really good. You know, like, let's not forget, I mean, we really have a very good hand as far as like art, just like the application and creation of art. I mean, we've got a huge range of creativity, and it's starting to showcase itself in comics now in the continent. So it's really exciting to see that.
Yeah, most definitely. In a market like South Africa, where you have like a plethora of comic book shops, you know, we got, you know, I know Les has a comic book shop. That's the Icon guys. You know, there's a comic book shop sprinkled around Johannesburg and Cape Town. You know, Reed Pop was trying to establish themselves in Africa, and you know, they came to Johannesburg. You know, now they've partnered with Diane Makings, and they're in Cape Town as well. Tell me, like, how has all this influx of the international audience, you know, DC fandom was trying to do a fixation. We're having a conversation with the DC team, and boom, they're trying to have when they were trying to do their panel, it was South Africa once again. You know what I mean? So there's a microscope on that region of Africa. How do you see that as an opening to opportunities for the comic book market, and how does that affect your business model when you think about the business of comics?
Well, there's the question, and as a, you know, as a creator right now, comic book creator right now, I guess, and I'm sure you guys can relate as well, is, you know, you want to hold on to what you've created, and you want to make sure that it's protected and becomes as big as it can be. I think that's true for everyone on this panel, and that means ownership, and that means a control over your work, right? But also there's the broader context. You're working within an industry that's much older than we are, you know, and then doesn't actually stem from our continent. So how do we navigate our way into this conversation and reap the rewards that, you know, a DC has or Marvel has, barring the fact that these companies are decades old, right, with their own teething phases and, you know, golden eras, silver eras, you know, like, I mean, there's been times. So I think we're at our infancy, and that's great, because we don't have to. I mean, how many? Let's be honest. I mean, a business model for comics today is varied. You can choose to either be digitally published or hard copy published. That's a real reality, and both of those ends have their own rewards. So it's obviously riskier today, or at least that's the suspicion, that it's riskier today to publish hard copies of the books, because who's going to buy it? People are more on the internet, so might as well just have like an EPUB and save yourself the cost. But, you know, it's I don't know. I think everyone, to each their own. I think everyone has got their drives for and ambitions for this industry, especially here in Africa. I don't know if we should be too ready or open to outside influences, because I think we should. It's again, like I said, it's tricky because the rest of the world is watching. The DCs didn't have the rest of the world watching in the beginning. Now we have everyone watching and hounding us for content all the time, and there's no questions about whether you have the capacity to put this thing out every month, or Akushwa just mentioned about artists and what was it? Achange, he mentioned about artists and getting artists to do work and deliver artworks on time. And I mean, we're expected to have pipelines and all of this thing has to be sorted and working. And you have to make a market, develop a market that works and actually buys this stuff.
Yeah.
So we have to be artists, we have to be businessmen and women. So a lot is asked from us.
Yeah. I think that brings it to actually think about how we need to also create sub-industries within the entire framework of our industry, down to the distribution and the publishers and the creators, and creating these different chains of how we can flow through for us to have like a sort of fluid industry. Nana, what would you say is, I definitely know that your comic book is in fact, I can arguably say, Akosa, that your comic book is the only comic book to have a direct stand on diversity in terms of I'm trying to look for the word, in terms of sexual freedom, and in terms of standing in for the LGBTQ community that exists and is being subdued and being starved of content in the African market. How did you come about creating a narrative that actually, in a very subtle and diverse, open way, create content for this community, and at the same time also drive home important values that that are important for the market to accept at this time where things are changing?
Great question. I think it's been years of my activism. It'd been years of my activism that started from radio and TV and then branched out into other things. So by the time it got to developing Moon Girls, my voice in the stances on inclusion and diversity was just default. It was just like the air I breathe immediately. The Moon Girls, some of them had to be queer because that was the reality of my world, and then also it meant that if I'm trying to, I'm not just trying to speak to people who understand the issues. I was trying to speak to the Ghanaian landscape at the time, which is very homophobic. So then it was where I had to see how to tell this story such that you are reading the story and you are not put off by someone's activism or narrative. So for instance, these are the Moon Girls are everyday women and girls, living their lives. They have families, they have love affairs, they have broken hearts. It makes you see them in their everyday life, just like you, who gets a broken heart once in a while. And it's just, in this case, this is with a woman who has another woman who keeps breaking her heart. And when you put people in that stance of being empathetic, just playing with real life human experiences that all of us connect to. We all fall in love, we all get hurt, we all just, at that point, you don't think about, oh, your skin color is this, or oh, your sexuality is this, or your religion is this. It's just, this is someone just trying to find happiness, So that was the intent with how we were writing Moon Girls, for it to, yeah, you're seeing them live everyday lives, going to a school where there's a homophobic preacher, and also raping the girls in the school, which is an everyday story, that you hear about in the high schools, some of the high schools in Ghana, So it's, you tell these everyday stories that they know, and they just show the reality of our diversity and how we exist. So yeah, that was actually, it wasn't too difficult to build that voice. But yes, I also definitely wanted to be very sex positive, and very, I am esoteric in how that was, So in chapter 4, for instance, there's a whole lot of talk about, or images and philosophy about love making as a kind of a vortex into self-discovery, or finding balance in my art, So with a daemon, that is comes masculine, comes feminine at the same time, and having those conversations in those ways, So this is where, apart from the everyday stories, then I'm also picking on the fantasy and the epic, because that's also where I came from. I'm a lover of Alice in Wonderland. I'm a lover of the Mad Hatter and the hair. I'm a lover of those kind of crazy things. Lord of the Rings, finding a ring, finding the truth of life and power and balance. So it's playing with those things, and then just showing the diversity, because that's what we are, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what we are.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty intriguing, and I feel like that was such a necessary narrative that needed to be that needs to be a conversation. What Moon Girls does is that it starts a conversation. You know, and looking at that, what has the reaction been? Both the positives and the negatives. What has that been like? Since you started publishing the book.
Actually, we haven't gotten. I've not gotten a negative feedback yet, but what we keep getting is, "Wow, I didn't know this before," or "Wow, I didn't think about this way before."
Yeah.
And that was exactly what we wanted people to feel and do. It wasn't about, you read this and then you immediately think this is wrong, this is right. It's supposed
Hmm.
to actually make you think, "Oh, I didn't think about it this way," and
Yeah.
actually, how you interpret it, we welcome that. Because, so if you see, there's a lot of the panels that are just very like poetry images to me. It's
Yeah.
just poetic images that are symbolic, just to give people that chance to think, and have opinions on something that are raised by reading the comic. And so whatever new thoughts you came to, whatever new philosophy you came to by reading the Moon Girls, that is exactly what we want people to experience.
Yeah, most definitely, and that's definitely something that's appreciated. Having a comic book that brings about inclusion and representation for all kinds of people. Many a time we forget that these people exist on the African continent. And they're always left in the shadows. But having a comic book that kind of makes them feel like, oh, we're being heard. Oh, yes, we exist, and yes, we're being represented in this genre of storytelling is very important, not just locally but internationally.
The impact, sorry to chime in there, I
Yeah,
just wanted to echo that. I mean, I think what's important about it is that it normalizes. You
Yeah.
know? So stories normalize because, it's something I was reading, but I just felt I couldn't resist but have to chime in. Remember that when you're reading a book or a novel or a comic book, you're reading as though you're the character. So you're
Exactly.
literally, the
exactly.
characters become your avatar. So I think it's people the person who's reading it, and this is true for everyone, including myself, who was like the first black superhero in South Africa, right? And that was the real drive. It was the inclusion, right? This is the same conversation, but
Yeah.
a couple of years later, you realize that that's not really the narrative of it. It was your intention,
Yeah.
but however, because stories become allegories of what you're trying to say, people end up getting lost in the story, and that's what good storytelling is. It's like you're educating people, but at the same time, you want to make it indirect. You want to still tell a nice story. So kudos.
Exactly.
And that's the beauty of art, right? That's what makes art just like amazing, and just bridges the gap between politics and everything else, because in art then we can actually have a conversation, despite all our isms.
Exactly. Despite all our isms, exactly. Having the conversation. I like that. Mutsundi, Shadow Walkers. Now,
Yes.
Shadow Walkers, I got to see a lot of characters. I got to see characters from the West African mythology. I got to see characters from East African mythology. I got to see Africans. I say Africans. I got to see characters from, outside African mythology.
Yeah.
And I think that also showed a representation of how you are a product of both Africa and Europe, because I got to realize your mother is European, right? And your father is from the East Africa. So how was it trying to create a comic book that kind of brought in both cultures, but found a way to marry it in such a powerful way?
Okay, so yeah, as you said, I've benefited a lot from having both African Kenyan experiences and Canadian experiences on my mom's side.
Canadian. I apologize.
Yes. No, it's all good. It's direct descendant, so yeah. With me personally, I wanted to, as a writer, create something I felt wasn't in the art sphere at the moment. And this was at the time when we had this movie come out about the Egyptian pharaohs, Gods and Kings. We also had the Gods of Egypt, which was kind of a disaster, right? So I felt that I needed to create a story that gives proper representation. So the premise of the story is, just like life began in Africa and East Africa, the gods began in East Africa, and then they spread out to the rest of the world. So their society has kind of mirrored humanity, in the sense that even though they're more advanced, they've had their own conflicts, their own wars, and occupied different spaces within the world as the world developed, right? So then you have the primary gods, in this case being African gods, for upscale hierarchy, and then you have different hierarchies of gods that spread out to Europe and elsewhere in South America, right?
Yeah.
Now, in the story, it focuses on the humanity of super beings, where they've had a civil war. And through that civil war, the earth separated, they've gone to different corners of the earth. And now they're trying to come back together because one of their ancient enemies has returned. That enemy, who used to be one of them, wants to destroy them. So they have to come together to fight the common enemy.
Wow. So that kind of actually shows the diversity that we share, but then how also how, as much as we're diverse and from different parts of the world, from different cultures, we all stem from the same place. There's still that unity, there's still that humanity that binds us all. And that and that center of creation being the origins of the comic book story, but also can also be looked at into the origins of how humanity was formed.
Right, and one of the things that drove me to have that approach is Africa has very diverse cultures, but rarely do we look outside of our own cultures. And this has just been my experience. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if you look at Egyptian mythology, there's been a period where Egyptian mythology has been at the forefront, but no one has looked beyond that, right? The same thing, you may have had the experience where, as a Nigerian, you focus mainly on Nigerian gods, the Orishas and certain Yoruba gods, right? But then how have you been introduced to the gods of Ghana, the Aka gods, the Sasaya, and that kind of thing. So I wanted to also be a platform where we can experience cultural legends outside of your own bubble, in a sense.
Can I ask a question?
Just
Why do you? Can you tell me why you call it shadow workers? Is it shadow workers?
Shadow walkers.
Shadow walkers. Yeah, I
So
love that. Yeah,
yes,
I want to hear the story.
okay. So creating shadow walkers was also a journey of discovery for myself, and I found out that a lot of Africa's cultural legends and history has been hidden behind what's considered mainstream, right? And the whole term mainstream is another kind of worms. So yeah, I was like, Africa's history walks in shadows. That's going to be the title of the comic series and the book. Just to give an example, how many people know that Africa had its own civilization of dwarfs, right? How many people know that Africa had its own forest fairies called the Aziza, right? So there's all this information that's out there, and it just needs to be brought to the forefront. Right?
yeah, that's actually very intriguing.
Hang
You
on,
know,
man. I'm sorry, man. You're gonna have to say that again. Like, what? So hang on. I just want to know more about that because I find that really amazing. Because dwarfs and as
Yep,
well as
dwarves. Yeah, in Ghana, right? There are a lot of stories where, for instance, for someone to find wisdom or find or be initiated into spirituality, right?
Yeah.
Often it's a dwarf that would lead you there. Sometimes dwarfs also are the ones that bring you money. Dwarfs are the ones that also send messages from you to the gods, you know, and they are all described differently. In Ghana, our dwarves have their legs turned backwards and have a lot of hair. And if you go to any traditional priest, you know, and they call them, you would actually see them that way. You know, it's and this is a spiritual, you know, it's not even just mythology. It's actual spiritual mediums, you know.
yeah, that's amazing.
melting pot this place, guys. Like, I don't know. Like, and I don't know. Like, I think the question I kind of wonder. Sorry, Sumter, bro. Like,
That's okay.
I think the great thing is like, how do we collate all of this stuff? You know, like, and yes, we are already making stories, but it just feels like, you know, it's so much, right?
Yeah, and that's, I feel like that's
Even
our
in South
superpower.
Africa, bro, like even in different pockets in South Africa. I'm from a small town in the Eastern Cape, but I live in Cape Town, right? And both of those worlds also have their own subterranean or demigods or however you will. I mean, like it's our cultural reference points are very old, and the details are very like strange, right? Like,
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
I'm just
I
kind of
think
like,
that's definitely that
yeah.
diversity is what also gives us our strength in storytelling, and I think it's something that gives us our key advantage as African storytellers, because then nobody can come and tell our stories like we can, because we
Facts.
have the bottom understanding, we have the top understanding, we have the inner cracks understanding,
The
and
shadow understanding.
we have the shadow
I
understanding.
don't understand.
We are the shadow walkers.
No,
God.
Shadow
no.
walkers. You know, and that gives us our ability to always remain above any brain drain or any sort of foreign injection that is going to try to, take in our creative source. You know, just like we have the oil, just like we have the gold and the cobalt, our creativity and our stories is the one resource that we have, which is infinite. And its complexity and its the ability for it only to be deciphered by us is what gives us our power, you know, and that's something that we should hold very close. Um,
Actually, if
Yamakasi.
to chime in again,
Yeah.
like this adding to the
Yeah,
idea of the. I mean, I've been watching American Gods, right?
yeah,
And in the story, Anansi is there, right, as the spider god from West Africa, and
yeah,
it's kind of interesting that this now we have our our own kind of take on that and how we sort of like navigate and communicate with gods through shadow workers. So, yeah, dude, that's
I mean, most definitely.
I'm particularly biased on this because it's subject matter that I'm currently very interested in.
Yeah, and when you even look at the American Gods, they made a massive blunder because in the beginning of the American Gods, you see them talking to Anansi, and then you see some slaves on a boat praying to Anansi, and they're speaking Igbo, and Igbo is the Nigerian language from the East
Yeah.
Africa when they should be speaking Twi or Ga,
Twi or Ga,
you know, which
exactly.
is Ghanaian language, and I'm like, what is
Yeah.
going on here? Why are they praying to Anansi in Igbo language? You know, and that's the cultural misappropriation that we need to keep on fixing, so they don't turn our culture into fantasy.
Well,
You know,
someone needs to make the call and say, Black Panther, you got it wrong.
totally.
Take a step back.
You know, most definitely.
I actually like bite my tongue about that because like I remember when it came out, I was really like euphoric about it. I think the spirit of it was correct, but there's a lot of work to be done as far as the accuracy because with our stories, the devil's in the details. That's what makes the real meat of our stories is the fact that contextually, you go deep into each of these stories. There's so much detail, so it's not good enough that Disney says, we'll just Disneyfy it or give it like that Lion King magic, and there you go, Black Panther. So
Exactly.
after some reevaluation, I was like, ugh, we need to step up on our.
Another thing that we definitely need to be careful about is the narrative. And if you look at the narrative of Black Panther, you see African prince, right? And this African prince is discovering his position as a king after his father has passed away. And who is the enemy in this story? The enemy is an African brother from the diaspora. And that is a very, very dangerous narrative. And those kind of narratives are what, we need to control. And yes, we understand that it's entertainment and it's entertaining. Yes, that's great. Black Panther did an amazing thing for the industry in terms of diversifying and bringing out African creativity and culture to the forefront, making us understand that African culture is commercial. With being one of the highest selling Marvel movies, we appreciate that. We love that. Shout out to also the support for the Black community in terms of the actors. We support what they're doing. I got love for Marvel. Let that be put on record. But the narrative of putting the Black diaspora against the Black African, the original Black African people, and trying to say that is the villain, is not what I feel should be the best narrative for the young Black child growing up in America to watch. He shouldn't feel like he is what's the name of the other guy that wasn't what's his name?
Killmonger and
Killmonger, yeah.
Killmonger,
when you think about the name Killmonger, it paints the Black American in a certain way, and it tries to make the Black American even affect their self-worth and their evaluation of self even more. It didn't have a positive message.
I would say, so I guess because the medium was through film and was through art.
Yeah.
As you raised that, we are actually having this conversation, which is the powerful thing, right?
Yeah.
And also, for me, I felt even that opposition that was created afterwards, you could see at least on even Twitter, right? Then there was a lot of conversation between Africans and African Americans on Twitter, and actually the notions and stereotypes we have of ourselves, and that was spearheaded just because of the film. These are things that are seated subliminally. Ghanaians will call African Americans akata, and things like that, and they would call us certain things, the stereotypes that are created.
Exactly.
And it was through that medium that I guess even the shaking and having the conversation came about. And I actually met him once, luckily, the director, during my stint with the Obama leaders in South Africa. And I threw this question to him, and he said what it was for him, it was art if it makes you have the conversation, that's exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
You know, so I guess art kind of helps that. You know.
Yeah. 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 So,
If I can add, as much as it bought into or played off of a negative stereotype, I think most of what you mentioned is that divide needs to be addressed. For some reason, whether it's culturally or artistically, the broad communication between Americans or Black Americans and Africans from the 70s and 80s shut down. As in, from that point, we just went totally different directions.
Yeah.
And maybe he just wanted to address that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Most definitely. You know, that's something that I captured from that storytelling. But but just like Nana has said, definitely the art has brought that conversation to the forefront and is giving us an ability to express these two sides. And where people are expressing how they feel uncomfortable about that narrative, and the feeling uncomfortable about that narrative, in fact, in itself is progress, because it means that we want to connect. It means that we want to hold hands. It means that we want to see the next Black Panther movie. We want to see a much more positive narrative between the diaspora and the African continent. So it all is serving its purpose, I believe. Yamakasi, on meeting, what was it like creating? What was the process like in creating the Little Orisha, which was formerly known as the Orisha Peking, right? Did you come up with a name? And something that really intrigues me is, how did you come up with the art style, which is known as the Kimpoki? What was that like?
Okay. All right. So basically, I've always been questioning people, questioning why are we doing this. Like when we were working back in the days with my former artist, everything was so Japanese, like the names, the art style, everything was just so like Japanese and foreign. I was like, why do we do this? Why can't we? And they were always like, nah, you know what? That's what works. This is what is working. So let's just do this. Like, let's just continue doing what works. And we always separated. And I think that was a good thing, because there was something in me that always wanted to bring something different, something unique. And I needed someone who understood the need of uniqueness, the need of bringing out something unique and different to the world. So when I found out about the Nigerian culture, the Nigerian mythologies, some the Yoruba, Igbo, but also the Ghanaian mythologies, I was so mind blown that the fact that it was so complex, so detailed, so rich, because I've always known about like Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and I've always been so amazed at the beauty of it. But I didn't know that in Africa we had like so beautiful stories, so characters that had so much charisma and so much to teach in terms of life lessons and morals on. And so when I found out about those, I was mind blown, and I just decided, you know what, this is the time. I feel like this is what my soul has been looking for: this difference, this crave for uniqueness and bringing an African narrative. So I jumped on the ship. I jumped on it. I started researching and researching and researching. And the thing with me is that I feel like I've been raised in a matter of, in a way that I'm open to other people's cultures. So I'm not attached to my own, but I'm always open to people's culture. So I had to learn Pidgin from South Africa. I had to learn some of Yoruba. I listen to a lot of Yoruba's music, Igbo. Like I'm so interested in other people's culture. So I wanted to bring it into a story and make it a melting pot of African mythology, just like Shadow Walkers. Like that's the book I need to read, by the way. So that's how I come up with Orisha King. But the thing is, I think the story came up in a very weird way. That was strange. It wasn't planned, actually. The thing is, like, there was a Lagos Comic Convention, and I wanted to do like a promo art for the Lagos Comic Convention. to support the movement, and we decided, oh, you know what, let's use orishas. And then I asked to Ode, who's my artist, what is best? What do you think is best? Do we go with like the chibi arts, or do we go with like orishas? And we chose chibi art because we saw how Yoruba gods, orishas, have been portrayed in the media or by most African creators. They always look so big, so huge, so scary, so so strange, and I didn't like it. I was like, man, I need to bring something different. So it's always the need of bringing something fresh, different. So we decided, let's go for chibi art, and because we understood some of the pidgin we were speaking and were learning, so we decided to put together these two words, orisha, pikin, which means young kids, kid god, and then we approached Somto, and we were like, yo, Somto, like we have this idea and we would like to present it to the Lagos Comic Convention, and he saw it, it was like, oh, this is dope, I want a comic book from this. I'm like, what? Yeah, I'm ordering the series. I'm like, okay, cool. So we started making the series, but then it was always about putting out a story every month, like for a specific season. But then the story was not what I wanted it to be because we didn't have time to develop it. So I've always wanted to develop the story. That's the reason why we rebooted it. We had to reboot it. And so now we've rebooted the story and we developed it narratively, but also artistically. So we are proud of what we put out as work for the generation and the next generation. And in terms of the art side, again, it's always about fighting the establishment, fighting what has been established, fighting the way Africans have been portrayed. So, growing up, you always have this white standard of beauty, the lips, the skin, the eyes, the hair, and that has caused so much damage on African psychology, African self-worth, or the way we see self-perception. And so that's how I grew up, in a way that people, even my own friends, would like mock my skin. Oh, you're too dark. They nicknamed me like Midnight. They could use to call me Midnight because I was too dark. Or, oh, your lips are too big. Oh, your hair is too big. So I was like, you know what? Since I understand the power of representation, that was even way before Black Panther came out. So I was just like, you know what? I need to bring out a story that's going to change the way we see ourselves, like the kids, because it starts with the kids. It starts with the younger age. When you're young, that's the time where you build your world and how you see yourself. So we wanted to put out something that kids could read, and they would look at those imagery and they would not find them disgusting, but they would get so used to seeing this imagery that they will literally praise their uniqueness. So I told the artist specifically, I want big lips, make them as big as possible. I want big hands, big head, big. Give me the darkest character ever. She's going to be the goddess of beauty. I wanted her to be the goddess of beauty because I want a very dark-skinned girl to feel like I am beautiful. So that's basically how we created the Kimpoki style. And it's funny that we have the name Kimpoki because that is also another way to just, fight the establishment of our own society. Because in Congo, they mock art so much. So when you draw, they say, oh, why are you drawing this Kimpoki? So it's a way, it's a negative word actually, it's a derogative word to call art, to call drawings. This Kimpoki art, you will never make your life with Kimpoki. I was like, okay, you know what? Let's create this style and make it so famous. Make sure that this is going to create a platform for African artists to become rich in the future, to make money and live off their dreams, of their art, so that this word will never be negative again, but this is going to be a word for people to find. Like there was a story called Orisha Pikin that used this style for the first time, and it opened a way, it made a way for artists in Congo to actually make a living of their work. So that's basically the entire narrative of Orisha Pikin. And
That's absolutely amazing. Because we're pressed for time and we would have gone so on and forever, having discussions. When you have so many brilliant minds and creators in one room, it could go on forever. I really appreciate everyone for coming through today. And before we leave, I would like everyone to just give a little bit of information about yourself, your publishing house, and what you do. And also give us an insight into what you see the market, how you see the market in the next 5 years, and how you want to take advantage of that. So I would start with Akosa.
All right, thank you. I wanted to say to Yamikazi that I actually really like that you're taking away European gods and giving kids their African gods, and that's what's up. I love
So
that.
much.
I really love that. Anyway, so sorry, the question was again.
The question was, so basically, give us a little bit of a little bit of info about yourself again in terms of your publishing outfit, where we can find you, and
Okay.
also give us some an insight into how you see the market in the next 5 to 10 years and how you want to take advantage of that.
Okay, so my name is Akusia Hansen, and yes, I'm the creator of Moon Girls. And Moon Girls is available for free on moongirls.live. You can download it for free on moongirls.live. Find us online at moongirls_live on Instagram and Twitter, and also we're on Moon Girls on Facebook as well. Moon Girls Live. Season so download it, read it, and let us know what you think. And season 2 is actually going to be coming out from next year, January through to June. And then that will be where we'll end, and we'll release some backstories at that point. And yes, catch me on my radio show wherever you are in the world. It's 7 p.m. GMT, 00 West African time, from 7 to 10 p.m. And the dial is Y107.9 FM. Tune in there as well. We can have some conversations. And yes, what I feel about the industry in the next 5 years, I'm just like grateful for all the creators, who are creating despite the odds. I think earlier I was spoken about how people don't have, creative directors and inkers and illustrators. People are doing, one person is doing so much. And in my own work, I've just almost died with the stress, because you're actually producing under capacity and still trying to do top-notch work. So I'm grateful for what is there, and I know in about 5 years, just because of what is today and what has been in the past, is going to be even more exciting in the market. And I'm grateful to all of you here right now on the panel for what you do, for the field. Vortex, what you also do is very powerful, because you then create the market and distribution for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Nana, as well for creating awesome content always. Mutundi.
Okay, so yeah, my artist name is Mutende Writes. Mutende Writes, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So as I said earlier, I'm a novelist, scriptwriter, and comic producer. Where I see the industry going in 5 years, we're the ones who are going to decide it. Okay, so we're the ones who have to set the trend and decide what happens. But I'm very inspired by everyone I've met here today. Just keep creating your stuff. What I am looking to focus on is obviously continue with Shadow Walkers, but then go deeper and focus on individual stories. I would love to see, and then I'm going to work on this myself, I would love to see someone do a story of Hannibal Barca, the way they did the story of Alexander, the way they did the story of Gladiator. There's so much untapped history just in North Africa. My takeaway is obviously copyright your work, but then set your work up for different mediums. Don't just focus on comics, because if you look at the trend in Hollywood, everything that's been made into a TV series or a movie within the past 2 years has come straight from a comic book. So when you're producing your comic books, just as something I share, have that in mind. So make your comic book, make a movie script, make a book, and then obviously develop your merchandise, which I'm sure you're already doing. We just want to throw that out there just in case. Yeah.
Awesome, bro. Cheers, man. We love Shadow Walker. Shadow Walker. Loyiso?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, so Quezi, yeah. So check us out on Facebook, Quezi, on Instagram, Quezi_flyboy. We're out on Twitter as well, Quezi_flyboy as well. So all the new information as well as news on the release date of the comic book will be live, as well as the sneak peek teaser for the animation. So be sure to check that out. I want to shout out to Clyde Beach, who is the co-developer on the project, Mohale Mashicho. I want to thank, shout out the homies at Marsh Media, production company who's really assisted me in adapting Quezi into what will be an animation series. So shout out to them as well as Lupin Visuals. Everything else we'll upload on the interwebs. See you guys soon, hopefully. Maybe we can do this for real next year. But again,
Yeah.
it's a privilege to have this chat. Actually, I would have loved to go on a bit longer because we're starting to find that these dialogues are very few in between. So huge admirer of your work, guys, and thanks for the platform.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you so much, Loyiso, for creating and for serving as a a beacon of the industry that has transcended through time for this long. Looking at creators like you give a lot of inspiration for for more creators. So well done, bro.
Oh, and what's coming in the next 10 years, geez, who knows, really? But I think I'll echo the words of adaptation, right? I think if you're creating a comic book, you have to think, again, just like my colleague just said, you have to consider its life outside of the comic book. You want to be a storyteller before anything else, because we've got these different mediums now, and Africa is being looked at very closely for its content. Hold on to your content, hold on to your intellectual property, and use it, and use it at the end of the day, because the people who were creating these stories for also aren't in this room or ever share our space. It's the little ones, particularly for me, that I really believe deserve this type of storytelling, and that's what we should preserve, for the next 10 years or next decade or, next century. Right? Cheers.
Makasi, what do you have for us?
Yeah, thanks again for having me in this panel. I'm Yamakasi. That's the name I chose, and that's the name I want to be remembered of. My work, Little Risha, can be found on Vortex 247. We're working with Vortex Corporation, which means that we work with Vortex Animation. And so, other than the comic book that is planned to be released next year, we are already working on an animated series, like short animated series, and also on the video game and merchandising. So we are really trying to use the transmedia opportunities or mediums that the new world is giving us. So yeah, that's all I can say. That's been a great session. I've learned a lot. I want to read your books, guys. Now that I know about Moon Girls, I'm going to read like every book on the Vortex Corporate. I haven't had time. Because I haven't even had time to watch Netflix. So I'm gonna read all these books. I hope I can find Quezi online to buy. I hope I can find Shadow Walkers online to buy as well. So I'm going to buy and dive into African stories more. So thank you guys for everything.
Okay, thank you so much everyone for coming through today. I love you all. You guys are amazing. I'm so inspired by each and every one of you. I'm Vortex is built through creators and brilliant minds like you guys. Welcome to the Africa Report, Comic Report. We're excited and we bring to you Akoso Hansen of Ghana, Elias Nabute, Mtundi from Kenya, Nairobi, Loyiso Mkize from Cape Town, South Africa, our Change Kid Duo from the Congo, based in France, My name is Somto Ajuluchuku, representing Vote 247. And thank you all for spending time with us. Love you and peace.